Welcome back to another video, everybody. Obviously right now we're starting this video the day before, just got off work, but I'm going to explain to you what we're doing and then we're going to hit the river. So here's what's going on, you guys. In this video, I'm going to do the spinning rod versus the center pin, and we're going to break down everything, and I'm going to try to show you as much as I can. So for my spinning setup, it's just your regular spinning float rod, a 10.5 foot float rod. I've got a slip bobber. There's a 3/8 ounce bobber on here, a 3/8 ounce weight. And on here I have the long leadered setup, which I did a video on that. You can find it, or I can link it down below. You guys can check it out later to show how I set this up. But it's your simple long leader bead setup, what 90% of guys are going to be fishing on the river. Now, the other hand here is going to be the center pin. Now, we're going to go over the casting differences, the drifting, and everything between a center pin and a spinning setup, and why I think a center pin is so much better. On here, I've got a fixed float setup, so a completely different setup. This is going to be completely, 1v1 challenge. We have more of the Midwest style. I'm going to throw a 3/8 ounce bobber on here. It's a fixed float, and then I got my shot line. I also did a video on how to set this up. You guys can check that out as well, probably link in the description. But this is going to be my more Midwest style versus the, West Coast style, the Pacific Northwest. So let's get out there and see how we do. All right, guys, down here at the river, so we got the center pin set up and the spinning rod set up. I'm probably just going to fish for like the first hour or so until it gets light enough and we get settled in. And then I'll talk about the setups, but I'll probably just start out kind of swapping back and forth between them, fishing them. And then, like I said, later on, I'll probably end up talking about differences and casting and all that. But getting set up here. But see, with the spinning setup, I'm just having to feed this line out, and now I get a bunch of line on the water. When the bobber goes down, I've got to pick up a ton of line. All right, so I took a few drifts with the spinning setup, just that bead setup. Now I'm running a bead on the pin, a little fixed float. See, here's where the center pin comes in handy, because I can just let this spool spin as that float goes down the river, and I'm always tight to that bobber. That spinning rod, you can see me, I had to work that rod and dump that line out, and then you get a bunch of line bowing on the water. The center pin, I can cast it out there and I'm tight to my float. That reel stays tight to my float, and as that float gets down below me, I just basically let this reel start to spin, and I'm tight to my bobber the whole time as it's floating down the river. All right, so that's a perfect demonstration, you guys. I was nice and tight to my float, it went down, and all I had to do was just pick up. I know it's not a steelhead. Well, it is a steelhead, just a baby steelhead. But all I had to do was just barely lightly pick it up, and I had the fish hooked. Try to be really gentle with those fish. That's one fish for the center pin, I guess. Alright guys, well hopefully there's some footage there that you guys can pick up on the center pin and the spinning reel. The difference is the drift, right? Casting, obviously we all know how to cast a spinning reel for the most part. Now the center pin, how I cast the center pin, you guys can see out there, I pull down on the line to get my momentum up, and then I swing that rod out there, and basically it sends it out there. I know I'm not very good at explaining that, and I will do more of an in-depth casting video on the center pin. But casting, you're really not losing much. A spinning reel, obviously with a heavier bobber, it's easy to fling it across the river. Spinning reels, they will let things fly. I think overall a spinning reel, you're just going to get more distance out of it. Not necessarily more accuracy, but more distance of being able to just fling it across the river. The center pin, especially with that fixed float setup. So I started off this morning running that fixed setup, which is really hard to fish in this water. So I'm actually going to change it out to a slip float. But with the fixed float, it is a little bit harder to cast with the center pin because it's lighter. Even though this is an 11 gram, which is about 3/8 of an ounce, and I have about 3/8 of an ounce weight on there with my split shot, the way that it lays out, it's very hard to actually cast long distances. So in this river today, we got bigger water, and the section I'm fishing is faster water. It's really hard to effectively get that shot line down there. Where the shot line really comes into play is going to be your nice tail outs, your smooth runs. That is where the shot line is going to excel, because the split shot can lay out and create that arc and push that bait out in front. Whereas this water, there's so much turbulence going on in this section that with that split shot, they're all just kind of getting washed around. So I'm going to switch my bobbers out. The issue I ran into was I let my younger brother use my spinning setup the other day, and he told me, that he got a tangle and had to cut some line off, but he cut pretty much all of the line off of this reel. You can actually see the spool down there a little bit. I didn't even pay attention to that. I was like, oh, there's probably still like 100 yards of line, but there's barely enough line to make a cast across this river. So the spinning rod is going down. I'm going to put a slip setup on the center pin because I feel like it's going to get down better in this type of water. All right, guys, rigging up a little jig and shrimp. One little jig that I tied, a little nightmare pattern. So many people fish beads, and this river has been pounded today. And most of them are fishing beads, so I'm gonna go ahead and try a jig here for a little bit. Just rig it up on my slip setup, about a 3-foot leader of my jig. Try that out. I've had one bobber down on a bead. I was looking away and I looked back at my bobber and it was chugging up river. So I knew that was a fish, but that's why you always got to pay attention. There we go. Little jig set up. So let's get a steelhead, guys. What's that?
Want a hand landing that thing?
Sure. How you guys doing today?
Good, man.
You getting them?
We lost a couple.
Yeah.
How about you?
That's about how my day's going.
Yeah. So let's make this one turn around for you.
Yeah.
I'll get over here. I'll go right over here.
All right. Yeah.
Got him.
Got him. All right, well, I don't know what I got on video because my GoPro was wigging out on me. I turned it on and then turned back off on its own, but we got one. Here it is, you guys. Nice little hatchery hen on a little clustered, lured by the bead. That's actually the addicted one that they collabed on and came out with, a 13 millimeter. Nice little steelhead. All right, guys, well, that is my take. My first kind of video on the river of the centerpin versus a spinning rod. And like I said through the video, that spinning rod actually was low on line, so I didn't really get to fish it much. I kind of showed in the beginning there just kind of the difference between that feeding the line out in the spinning reel versus the free spool centerpin. But then I realized that my spinning setup didn't have much line on it, like I said, so I pretty much fished the centerpin the rest of the day. And then we ended up finding the fish later on in the day. And ironically, it was addicted fishing that actually helped me land that fish. I was out there and I hooked that fish on the centerpin, and it took me way downriver, down into this tail out. And I was chasing this fish basically out in the middle of the river. And I see this raft coming down. And my first thought was, oh, this raft is going to come anchor up, you know, and take my spot that I was fishing because I had ran downriver. And, you know, sure enough, it was Marlin, and Marlin was in the front, Jason was rowing, and then they got the camera guy, Alex, in the back. So it was the addicted crew, and, you know, Jason, super nice guide as well. I see him out there on the river all the time, and he's a good friends with my other buddies. And he goes, oh, want me to net it for you? So he jumped out and helped me land that fish. The GoPro shut off, though. That day it was so cold. That when my GoPro gets cold and it gets moisture in there, it just does not want to work and it just shuts off randomly. So I actually went to check to make sure I was recording, and then the GoPro shut off and I couldn't get it back on with the interaction. But I got some of the fight and got him netting it on GoPro, and then we talked for a second and went on our way. But it was just cool to see them out there. And yeah, so anyway, hope you guys enjoyed that video. And there'll be more videos to come. But, you know, I didn't do that great of job really going in depth in this video as much as I wanted to. So there's definitely going to be more centerpin breakdown videos, casting videos, and comparison videos. So stay tuned for that, guys. Get out there and slay some steelhead.